Hello and welcome to another Out of Spec Reviews video. You join me cruising in the Mercedes EQS AMG, a very comfortable car to cover some distance in. And I'm actually on my way to the Electrify America charging station because I heard some news on Twitter yesterday that they're actually not charging idle fees if you leave your car plugged in. And we all know we've started to see an increased trend in electric cars blocking charging stations after they've completed charging. So one of the easiest things you can do to combat that is, of course, charge the users for misuse of the system. And it seems Electrify America has no interest in preventing misuse of their chargers. So I'm on my way to test it out. I thought it'd be a cool video. Let's go try it together. We're at about, we should arrive around 45% state of charge. We're gonna charge the EQS to full and I'm gonna leave it there. I'm gonna do the one thing I really hate doing. So I think this will be an interesting video, A, for new electric vehicle owners to learn a little bit of charging etiquette, but also B, to wake charge network operators up, charge point operators, and say, hey guys, like there's a lot you can do to prevent this and to help drivers actually get the charge they need. So let's do that. That's kind of the idea here. So let's talk a little bit about the problem on the way over and why y'all need to start unplugging your cars. And then we're gonna go try out to see if we're actually penalized for doing the one thing that bothers me the most. So massaging seat on, comfortable cruise here in the EQS, and we're on our way to, of course, Loveland, Colorado's Electrify America station. We have the brand new units. Everything is up and running perfectly right now. It's not super cold outside, so we're great. And I still want to test the video to see what happens when we get below a certain temperature, a temperature where maybe it gets even colder than it does on a normal day-to-day basis. That's when we start to see some of these chargers start to fault out. So let's talk about the problem. And if you're an EV driver who goes on road trips, you already know this problem, and I feel your pain. We arrive at charging stations from time to time, and there's a car blocking the station. And I really hate to single out a particular type of car, but one thing that's been coming up in the forums, and of course we kind of perpetuate this, is Volkswagen ID4s are really known to be seen full charging at Electrify America stations or being left fully charged, not just for 10 minutes or 20 minutes, but for hours on end. And I think a lot of it isn't malicious behavior. I really think the ID4 is a car that a lot of new electric vehicle owners are buying, and they're just not educated. They just don't know. They don't realize what's going on. So I hope, the sunroof's opening. We don't want that. What? You can't talk with your hands in this car because everything's gesture controlled and things start happening. I got to turn off gesture control. But the problem is really not with ID4 owners specifically. 95% of them are great and really are causing no issues. It's really just the few out there that seem to be taking advantage of their free charging programs, which I do want to talk about, and also a few out there who just, I think, don't really realize what they're doing to other EV drivers by blocking a spot. And, this is really wasn't a problem a year ago because there were so many available chargers out there. And now it's starting to become more of a problem because we've seen so many electric cars being sold, especially in the last 6 months to a year. And we haven't seen that many new charging stations go in the ground. And so that means our existing stations are getting very crowded very quickly. So I hope that this can help new EV drivers learn a little bit of etiquette. And I also hope it can force network operators to say, hey, what can we do to help with station throughput and to be a very driver-centric company, which means making sure drivers can get to your station, they're safe, and you can get the charge you're looking for. So you join me here at an Electrify America DC fast charging station. This is our local station in Loveland, Colorado. Interestingly, they actually have a technician here working on the site, even though he can't find any problems with it at the moment. And he's actually just sitting there plugged in, blocking the station at the moment. And that is a EA employee driving, I believe, an EA company car. And yeah, but great to see that they're trying the stations out, making sure they're working. Had a nice chat with him, super nice guy. I was actually asking him a little bit about the cold weather stuff going on here, and he basically just said they waited until it warmed up for them to start working again. So I'm not sure that's the answer any of us wanted to hear, which means we're not totally convinced this hardware, the BTC units in particular, work in freezing temperatures. But that's not the point of this video. That will require another test at some point soon. This here, awesome, glad you got your app working. They were just switching their app over to the new cars so that it would work. This here is the AMG EQS, and what I'm doing is something that really hurts my soul a little bit. I am, of course, charging to 100%, which isn't great for the car. It's not great for really anyone around, but you'll see here, I've been here 37 minutes charging. We've put in 60 kilowatt hours. Sorry, my watch is going. And it's doing 41 kilowatts at 94%. Really not bad. It is quite chilly outside, so let's jump inside the Big Benz and see what's going on. So in we go. And it says another 13 minutes to 100%. We are now at 99% state of charge. Just popping out. The ID4 owner here left, charged only to 50%, just enough to get to their next station. Great to see that. Really awesome. I know I rag on ID4 owners a lot for full charging their cars. Actually, some friends of mine here in their red ID4 next to us, and they actually just bought their car. They were in a serious accident with their last one, and this is the one to actually replace theirs. They claim it saved their life, and they're just switching over their free charging plan to their new one. What is this, 18 kilowatts at 99% now? Getting pretty close to finding out how this all goes. I'm gonna leave the car plugged in and hopefully we won't create a line. I mean, I think at the end of the day, even with me here, if we create a line, I will just come back and redo the test. But right now we have one open spot. My friend's able to move. He's just trying out his charging. So I think we can make this work and just leave the car plugged in for a little while to see what. There we go. It just stopped. And so this means we have a grace period, 10 minutes left until idle fees. Forgive the screen flashing, just a weird refresh rate. It took me 52 minutes to get over to this point. I plugged in at noon. It's now 12:55. I'm, of course, a Pass Plus member. I'm paying for this. I'm not using the Mercedes free charging because I want to see how much they bill me. And it was 20 bucks to charge the car up to full. So I probably could have set a charging limit at 80%, but then, of course, everyone on YouTube would be like, well, it's because you didn't hit 100%. So this is the way I see most cars left at stations, charged to full, and then left there. So the 10-minute window starts now. Let's see what happens when we start eating into our grace period. And we have just reached the end of our grace period. And you'll see here, it says idle time, 0 minutes, 10-minute grace period. Why is it flashing? Exceeded. Idling, $0 per minute. So it seems as if all indications point that I'm not going to be penalized for leaving the car here still, which is truly a shocking situation. Tesla charges idle fees and others, and it's so needed because drivers will take advantage. And that means that other drivers who need to charge will arrive, and you'll see an idiot driving their EQS, leaving their car plugged in as an experiment for a YouTube video. And it's just not fair to other EV drivers. So let's just keep this plugged in for, I don't know, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, however long we need to go. And all indications point to not being charged here. $0 still. This is pretty crazy. So while we're running this experiment, I think let's talk a little bit about automaker partnerships with charge point operators and I guess some of the pros and cons that I'm finding of agreements like this. And when I say charge point operators, I'm not talking about the company charge point. I'm talking about network operators, Electrify America, EVgo, Blink. ChargePoint actually does operate their own network in some areas, but that's the name of their company. So don't think I'm necessarily referencing them. I've received some comments from viewers who are like, why do you keep talking about ChargePoint? I'm like, no, the name of networks like this are ChargePoint operators. And so why, I guess let's talk automaker partnerships. And specifically, I want to use the ID4 just because I think it's sort of becoming a trend and a theme that 90% of ID4 owners are great and they just charge enough to get out and they're using everything perfectly. But there's enough not great ones out there, specifically ones that maybe abuse the system or just don't know, honestly, because ID4 is a great first electric car. They just may not know that they're, hurting other EV drivers with their actions. So, and it applies to all cars. I'm not singling out ID4 here. really for any other reason than there's just a lot of them out there, and it's a lot of people's first EVs. And of course, yes, I know I've recommended a lot of them, but I think the majority are great EV owners, great EV drivers, very courteous. And I'm not saying you have to embrace the ID4 lifestyle if you buy one. I recommend you don't. So I recommend you don't embrace the lifestyle. The car is actually fine. Aside from software, the car's it's a nice, well-built car. So let's talk ID4, automaker partnership. In 2021, when the car launched, Electrify America and Volkswagen created a plan that was unlimited charging for ID4, which meant you could plug in, go from 0 to 100%. If the battery was cold and it took 2 hours, if it was, there was no penalty. Basically, it was just you could charge whenever you want. Lucid Air currently has a program like this, and other cars. That's really expensive for an automaker to buy a contract like that from Electrify America. And yes, I know EA is part of Volkswagen Group, but Volkswagen still had to buy that contract for ID4 owners. Either they found that ID4s in general were just charging for a short period of time or whatever. They didn't want to spend the money for the unlimited time contract. The 2022 model year and 2023 model year come with 30 minutes of included charging for 3 years. And what that 30 minutes means is when you plug in, you swipe in the Electrify America app. Somehow they still don't have plug and charge, which is a topic for another video. It's pretty crazy. You swipe on the app and you get 30 minutes, and then you start being billed for your charging after 30 minutes. But what I see are so many Volkswagen ID4 owners charging. They reach 29 minutes. I see them get out of their car, unplug, plug back in, and start a new session. And it's like, oh, okay, well, why, same benefit as the original unlimited plan at that point. And there are use cases where you might need the extra range to charge very high in your car. For example, if you're going on a long trip, if you're towing, if you're going to an area without DC fast charging. One thing I've noticed a lot of, and I talk to a lot of EV owners at charging stations, a lot of them are actually viewers, is many people charge locally to their home at DC fast charging stations. Now, some of them have no option for home charging at all, but I'm noticing an increase of cars with automaker partnerships. For example, Ioniq 5 here, ID4, others, even Taycan owners I've seen that charge locally rather than at home because they get free charging. And what that does is it clogs up the stations for us who actually need to use it. A year ago when no one had electric cars, no problem, right? Who cares? Because the stations were always free. Now this site is getting busier and busier by the day. So by, using the station all the time, it's not great for your battery pack to DC fast charge it all the time. I DC charge my cars quite a bit. They hold up pretty well, actually, but it is easier on it. A friend of mine's leaving in his red one. They're actually on a trip to Utah. And, I DC charge a lot, and it actually doesn't hurt the battery as much as you would think, but it's still better to AC charge your cars. And of course, it takes time out of your day. The benefit of home charging is great. It's not that expensive if you can put it in and charge there. Electricity's cheap. But when it's free, oh, well, you certainly get those few people who really take advantage. And I think that's certainly one problem. We're seeing a lot of people not charge at home and instead use DC fast charging because the car was sold with free charging. The other side of it is we're seeing a lot of cars charging to 100%, which takes a really long time. That's what's really hard on your battery pack. It really will degrade it if you full charge all the time on a DC charger. Highly recommend against doing that. Only do that when you need to. And it's sort of become a thing that, like, whenever you go to an EA station, you just always see an ID4 full going to 100%. And it's a bit of a shame, actually. But even worse than that is when you've reached 100% or the charging limit set in the car and you park it like we're doing right now. And this I'm seeing an increase of. So the reason for this video is there's a very simple way to discourage this kind of use. It's always going to happen. There's no way around it, right? Users are going to get distracted or get stuck in a meeting. And there's always going to be those 1 or 2 cases where you can't get back to your car. But I'm seeing so many, an absurd number of cars left plugged in, not charging. And it seems like, and I'm looking in the rearview mirror here, there's no penalty for doing so. All the penalties are in place. They obviously have the idea of charging an idle fee. They have a timer, a grace period. They have a calculator in the app that says, here's how much you'll be charged. But it's all set to $0. So why would EA want you to leave your car here. That's the only thing I'm seeing out of this, is they don't want you to move your car because they're not penalizing you. And right now I'm blocking utilization. They could be earning money from me doing this video right now, being plugged into the charger. But for some reason, they're not interested in creating higher throughput. Very odd. So you may ask, hey, aren't you billed at Tesla, for example, for idle fees only when the station is less than half full? The answer is yes. And I actually think that's a fair way of doing it. I don't see EA doing that at all. We actually just tested that theory because we had 4 cars plugged in just before, actually 3 cars plugged in, and I was not being billed idle fees. So we know that doesn't apply here. But Tesla's way of doing it is it will only bill you for the idle fee, I believe up to $1 per minute, if the station is at 50% capacity or higher. And I think that's pretty reasonable. Sometimes you go to a shop, the cars charge really fast. If there's 20 stations and there's a car there, maybe you leave it for a few minutes. I don't know. I typically run out and move the car, but I think that's fine. But when you have, most Electrify America stations only have 4 posts. This is the majority of sites that I've been to. There are a few with more, but certainly this is average. You really start taking up a lot of available charging space with even just 1 car blocking a station. And, you know, I really think that this is an opportunity, a really needed change to start billing for this type of misuse of charging, because I can't tell you how many times I've gotten to a charging station. It's been in many of our videos with cars just left plugged in for 30 minutes, an hour, 3 hours, 4 hours sometimes. They just park it and leave. And I'm like, hey, I need to charge. So what do? Do you unplug the guy? Is that the etiquette? I really don't know. I'm not going to recommend you tamper with other people's cars. I certainly have never done it. I've always just waited for a spot to open up. Many of you are like, I'm going to unplug that guy. And especially if there's no penalty, like I've always had the theory, let's leave them plugged in because they'll get idle fees. But they're not actually charging idle fees. So what the heck do you do? I don't know. Leave a nasty gram on their windshield for being this dude? It's hard to say. I'm curious to see what you guys think in the comments. So as we finalize and wrap up this pretty quick video, quick out of spec video, I think it's really important that we talk about, you know, just generally how these programs are put into place, automaker partnerships. In general, they sound like a great idea, and there are so many ways to do it properly. You can, you know, incentivize people to buy your car by offering a cheaper tariff. That would be, I think, the perfect way to do it. So 31 cents per kilowatt hour is pass plus, but maybe you pay 28 cents per kilowatt hour, 20 cents per kilowatt hour if you buy, you know, a certain car with EA. I really don't like the idea of giving free charging away. Certain automakers give you, you know, like Ford, for example, gives you 250 kilowatt hours, which is just a couple charges worth just to get you used to the network, and then you get going again. It's a pretty clunky area when we start getting here, but that really doesn't solve the problem that we're, you know, that's just an addition to what I'm talking about in this video, which is I'm seeing a trend. I'm seeing a lot more people charge to 100%, which is totally unnecessary in most cases. All you really need to do is just charge up enough to get to the next station with a little bit of buffer that you're comfortable with. And then also I'm seeing a lot of people just leave their cars plugged in for, you know, not just 5 minutes or 10 minutes and you're running back to your car, but hours at a station, which is really just getting a little bit ridiculous. It's now been close to 20 minutes. I still haven't been charged a penny for idle fees, and I really hope it's a quick fix. I hope it's a quick implementation for Electrify America to implement this. I personally am pushing and always will push for very high idle fees. And maybe you do it based off of station load as well, like Tesla. Maybe you say, hey, if you're 50% or more, you know, I would always charge an idle fee. I would say, okay, maybe it'd be my recommendation, at least 50 cents per minute if the station's empty and you left your car there. And I would say at least $4 to $5 per minute. I know it's expensive, maybe even more. If there's a station full. And then I think $25 per minute. I know it gets crazy, but I'm pushing for really, no one will ever go this high, but whatever the highest you can go if there's a queue waiting at your charging station. And honestly, all of that money shouldn't go to the charge point operator. It should go to the people waiting in line. They should get a credit on their charging from the guy who's blocking you. And again, I don't know how you would implement that if you are anyone other than Tesla, but that would be the fairest way of doing it. So just a little PSA, EA isn't charging idle fees. That doesn't mean go and leave your car plugged in at the station and walk away, but it does mean, hey, EA, start charging, because I've gotten to the stations in the last I don't know, month, at least 5 separate times where I've had to wait for someone to come back to their car that was already completed. If there was a way to disincentivize that behavior, I'd really appreciate it. Be really great for all EV drivers. And that's all we're pushing for. So thanks for watching another video. We'll see you on another one soon. Bye-bye.